William has been an inspiration to me and someone that, like a true friend, has challenged me in my thinking, has challenged me to go to another level. Has, I mean, he's like flown in, like shown up and knocked on my door and been like, let's level up, Matt. It's time now. Like he has literally changed my life and come to my home to do it. And there's not many people like that on this earth. I can't think of any other than him. And so I love this man. I love what he stands for. I love the work he has done, his passion, his drive, his heart, and it's incredible. It's truly incredible that we get to be here today and to learn from him. So please, put your hands together, clap or whatever on here, and the little buttons, emojis, but share your excitement. Let William know that you're excited to see him. I'm so, this is super special. So thank you for being here at Our Future 2024. I know many of you, it's cold, it's chilly, you can't even go anywhere. So thank you for spending your time with us and staying warm and getting ourselves energized for 2024. All right, so I'm going to duck out. I'll let William hop on.
All right, all right. Can everybody hear me? It's coming through good? How's everybody doing? Cool, cool. Looks like we got some thumbs up. All right. Well, that was a great introduction. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm happy to be here again. I think what is this the third time now? Yeah, this is number 3. Yeah, this is awesome. 4? Wow, time has been flying. Yeah, like shoo, I don't even know where the years go sometimes, but I have a lot to show for it. I know that for sure. Um, so I'm here to talk about truffles. I don't know how many of you guys have been following my work, but anybody that has been following my work, I'm sure you've seen I've been like super nerding out about truffles. And for good reason. So I might as well just open up my presentation here. Let me see. Share screen, boom, bop, boom. Go. Let me get that into slideshow. All right, cool. So, yeah, I've been super nerding out about truffles, and I've been nerding out about truffles for many years at this point. But we're gonna get into this presentation: truffles, the Earth's ultimate mushrooms. Bold statement, but I'm here to back it up. When we're talking about ultimate organisms, I mean, there's a couple ways that I would say that you would like go about assessing something like this, and what are my criteria for assessing something like this? I look at keystone organisms, right? I don't know how many of you all are familiar with keystone species or keystone organisms, but in the Roman arch architecture, there is a stone that sits at the top of the arch that is the keystone. And without that stone, the entire arch would not have its composition, it would not have its integrity. And so it's that one stone that holds everything together. So as we've learned throughout the years in studying ecology, almost every ecosystem has some set of keystone species that maintain a host of ecological function. One of the more popular ones is the wolves in Yellowstone Park. With the removal of the wolves from Yellowstone Park, the elk herds exceeded natural amounts. They overgrazed the areas, which expanded out waterways and caused lots of flooding. So people, this is when people started to notice, oh wow, like not only do the wolves maintain the elk population, but they also maintain the structure of the waterways by maintaining the elk population. So there's a lot of these different interspecies interconnections that we don't realize that one species is doing a lot of functions more than we may notice. And this has even gone as far in the modern time as into the understanding of keystone genes, where there are certain genes within organisms that maintain myriad ecological functions in an environment. So this is my criteria when I'm talking about, truffles being the Earth's ultimate mushrooms. I believe that they stand as a very, very powerful keystone species in environments all around the world. Um, and yeah, so I mean, might as well just get into it, right? So how did I get into truffles? Interesting backstory, especially considering I mean, I did grow up traveling, but I spent most of my young life in rural Pennsylvania. So it's just like, how did this kid figure out about truffles, you know? Um, and I figured out on the internet, just like I figured out most things, you know. It was about 10 years ago at this point, you know, summer 2020 or summer 2014, and I saw this video pop up on Vice. I mean, I was YouTube junkie. I've always been YouTube junkie. I literally watch ridiculous amounts of hours of YouTube every day while I'm doing stuff and just soak up information. And when I was doing this, you know, 10 years ago, I came across this video on Vice of this young man named Ian Perkayesta. And he had started a company called Regalis in New York City. And he started this company when he was 16 years old. He moved to New York City as a young man, not even old, and started selling exotic foods. So I'm just like, what? And you know, like he didn't go to school for it or anything like this. At this point, I'd already dropped out of high school, and I'm just like, I when I was in high school, I had a music group called Swag Boys. Like I've always been interested in like you know, the finer things in life, so to speak. But as I came into the understanding of permaculture, my ideas around these things and these desires transition into what I like to say is like the swag is so sustainable. There's elements of my work that is based in creating symbols in popular culture that can be understood and digested by individuals that only exist in a world of popular culture that can draw them into other realities outside of that world. But in order to communicate with individuals that exist in realities that are so different, you have to be able to speak that language. And the language is mostly, you know, materialistic and vain. So that's why I started getting into the swag is so sustainable. Like, how do I do the things that is like the finer things in life, but like make it something that's like, you know, beneficial. Um, so uh getting into this and at a young age, I'm like, oh, how can I sell truffles? How can I sell these exotic mushrooms? This looks so cool. And you know, I just like to shout out Ian as a big inspiration for that. So like that's what got me into truffles. And then you know, continuing into the translation, I was like 23 years old. Whenever I was 22 or 23 years old when I started selling truffles. And I would use it to buy nice things and take care of my son and you know, make sure that he was well off. And this would come around usually like in the winter time. A lot of the truffles that are classically consumed are winter truffles. So whenever the mushroom season would end for me in the fall, because I would pick so many mushrooms in the fall. Um, I would bolster my income by starting to sell truffles through the winter until spring came back around, and then we had more wild mushrooms. So yeah, I learned a lot early on about sourcing and about quality and about species. And one of the most important things that I think that I learned early on is that nobody knows anything about truffles. Everything that people think they know about truffles has been fed to us by a few companies that are making the most money and controlling the world truffle market. So there's like a lot of like historical things that people think, or you know, people think that like white truffles only come from the Alba region in Italy, or like black truffles can only come from like the Perigord region in France, or like there's all these like nuances that people have like held on to in this kind of elite culture that truffles comes from. And the heavy emphasis on the European culture has overshadowed the fact that truffles are native in every environment in the world. There are a diversity of truffles in every environment in the world. So what are truffles? Truffles are the fruiting body of hypogeous, generally ectomycorrhizal fungi. So when we talk about mycorrhizal fungi, we have endomycorrhizal fungi, ectomycorrhizal fungi, the fungi that get in the roots or the fungi that live on the outside of the roots. So truffles are fungi that live on the outside of the roots of plants, mostly trees, but they do live in association with a lot of other different plants. and they are the fruiting body, just like the mushroom. And when I say hypogeous, this is probably a word that people that are interested in mycology mostly have never heard, probably have never heard this word. And the reason why we don't hear this word is because as mycologists, we are generally dealing with epigeous fungi and not hypogeous fungi. And most people just never find the need to classify this because most people never work with hypogeous fungi. So hypogeous means that it fruits underground. Epigeous means that it fruits above the ground. And truffles used to be epigeous. So Tuberaceae, which is the classification for truffles, for most truffles, Tuberaceae's most recent epigeous relative is the South American cup fungus, Nothojapnia thaxterii. And I recommend, or I encourage you guys to remember that little fact that it's a South American cup fungus. That part's important. And Tuberaceae diverged 156 million years ago during the late Jurassic. That's also an important thing to note. And this is a molecular estimate, which I personally am holding to a higher standard than a carbon estimate. I think that radiocarbon dating is very effective. I know that we've used it for a longer period of time so that we have a better understanding of it. But molecular biology has evolved and developed so quickly, and coupled with the artificial intelligence and quantum computing and high powered computers, I think that it's very, very accurate in understanding when an organism developed a gene or when it started expressing a gene or when it evolved a gene. And this is how we're starting to get research papers like when did psilocybin start producing in mushrooms and things like this. This is how we know it's because of the molecular evidence. So the last thing that I will encourage you to put into your mind space during my talk is the release of your lifespan bias. Most people have a lifespan bias. They believe, I was born in 1994. Let's say for me, I was born in 1994. I'll probably live 80 to 100 years, considering modern medicine. I do believe that 100 years is very reasonable. So, that's my lifespan bias. This is my time era. I'm from the 90s. I lived during the 2000s. This is the biotech era. And you can get stuck in your lifespan bias and forget that life has been going on for billions of years before and continue to be. We're part of an ongoing evolution that does not stop or end on Mother Earth. And so that's very important for us to understand. And when we're looking at nature in our lifetime, we are experiencing biology as if it's a pause screen on a television or during a video or something. If the stream of life that goes on forever was a stream on a video, when we are walking around in our life, it's only walking around during a pause screen. So when you go look at a mushroom, you're seeing an organism, or any organism. When you go look at an animal, a tree, a mushroom, whatever, you're seeing it in a state of what it was in a transition into what it's becoming. So when we look at this cup fungus, we're looking at something that used to be a mushroom that's closing up its spore parts into a ball and going under the ground. But we're just seeing it in the pause of our lifetime. But if you watched it and fast forward over millions, hundreds of millions of years, you will see this cup literally close and go underground and become a truffle. And that's how truffles form. So this selection is for reduced water loss and animal dispersal. That's the one interesting nuance where I believe that they take on a higher role as a keystone species in the fact that they do need animals to disperse their spores. This is very important. And reduced water loss. Whenever your fruiting body, a fleshy water-based fruiting body is above ground, anything can dry it out. The wind, the sun, it's exposed to the elements, literally the things that cause DNA to be damaged, oxygenation, free radicals from oxygenation and sunlight. It makes a little bit more sense to be able to protect your fleshy fruiting body with a buffer. And using the soil as a buffer is a very intelligent thing to do in the sense that the soil temperature stays pretty consistent. Soil moisture can stay pretty consistent, especially around the roots of trees. So a very safe place to start fruiting or putting out your fruiting bodies. I don't know how many people are interested in evolutionary biology or anything like this, but if those of you that have learned anything about evolutionary biology, if you have taken the time, there's a very interesting trend in animals turning into crabs. So there's this interesting trend that many animals over evolutionary history take on a crab shape. I don't know exactly why. There's a lot of hypotheses why, but in the realm of fungi, there's a trend towards truffles. A lot of fungi tend to close up their gills, head towards the ground, and turn into a truffle, especially after grasses started to grow tall, because mushrooms were already producing before the grasses started to grow tall, which gave them, places to go down, become secotioid. I really don't know how many of you guys know mycology stuff, but secotioid mushrooms are like mushrooms that look like a cap and stem mushroom, but they don't really open their cap anymore. And again, we're watching a pause screen. We're watching things as they transition into other things. So evolutionary experiments. There have been over 45 animals, mostly placental and marsupial mammals, that depend on truffles. Like way more animals eat truffles, but there's about 45 animals that depend on truffles. Even though insects are animals, I didn't include them in that number because then it would be ridiculously high. But some of the animals includes voles, gophers, squirrels, chipmunks, mice, possums, bears, deer, elk, goats, bears, boars, all sorts of organisms. And there's 32 identified mycophagous turtles, and spores have been found in the excrement of various reptile species. Gastropods also consume truffles. So truffles have dominated in the diets of animals across the board. And I think it's because we've had a lot of time to interact with them. So there's research showing that foraging behavior, hoarding, hibernation are recognized as factors influencing the spatial and temporal patterns of spore dispersal. But I would like to dig deeper into this idea and emphasize the fact that I believe that foraging behavior, hoarding, hibernation, and mating are influenced by the patterns of brooding. So this research is emphasizing more like, oh, truffles only get around by the behavioral patterns of these animals. And I'm like, no, the animal behavioral patterns are heavily influenced by where the truffles are and when they produce. And I would like to throw in this little anecdote of one year I neglected my beehives over the winter time. And in the spring, when I went to go look in them, it was filled with mice. And the mice had eaten all of my bee larvae and all of the honey. And their eyes were really shiny and their coats were really shiny. And they were just like the healthiest mice I had ever seen around in the field ever. And I'd seen a lot of field mice just working on the farm. And I could tell I'm like, yo, these are genetically superior mice. These mice are healthy. They have nutrients. They got good nutrients. They're not just eating scraps of grains or whatever. They got full nutrition. And in my mind, I was like, wow, these mice are so healthy that I bet this next generation of mice that comes from this, even though they're not eating from the beehive, will have some level of health benefits from this generation. And this goes deep. I mean, the way that we care for our bodies affect our children, so on and so forth, whether it's physically or psychologically. There's different levels to this. So taking this idea, I could imagine any small mammal that's able to find this truffle, a truffle with such incredible nutrition, its family would be benefiting from it. And like one truffle to like a mouse, like a whole family of mice can eat a truffle and be satiated from the truffle. And then there's going to be a bunch of truffles in a general area. So I could imagine like the mice that are finding these truffles, the small organisms that are finding any organism, even to the level of the bears that are finding the truffles are experiencing more nutrition. And one of the effects of truffles is that they're aphrodisiacs and specifically very strong in affecting certain mammals, like um, boars and pigs will completely like position themselves for mating whenever they smell truffles or interacting with truffles. So I think that these truffles are helping to provide a lot of nutrition and then encouraging the organism to perpetuate the benefits. So evolutionary experiments here, when we understand, especially the small organisms that have this relationship with truffles, and we understand that all mammals, like almost every single mammal, started out from a small organism closer to the ground. And with our understanding that pre the KPG extinction event that happened 65 million years ago, all mammals were smaller than a cat because all ecological functions that were larger than a cat were taken by reptiles. So mammals were kind of existing as ground dwelling organisms at this point in time. KPG extinction event happens. For years, plant life above ground is suffering. I'm assuming that these organisms are seeking out fungi, tubers, any kind of root-based nutrition that they can find. Let's see here. Around 225 million years ago, Pangaea began to split into a northern continent called Laurasia and a southern counterpart called Gondwana. Each continent carried its own cargo of animals, and based on the known fossil records, scientists believe that the ancestors of mammals alive today emerged in the north and then migrated south. Molecular evidence states that mammalian orders diversified around 100 million years ago. This correlates with the evolution of truffles in the global south. As we mentioned, the truffles of the most recent relative of the truffles is in South America, and the mammalian order started to diversify around 100 million years ago in the south. So I think that they started to evolve particularly correlated with each other. And there's some interesting, a couple pieces of research that led me to start putting together this hypothesis. And the research really started out whenever I understood that truffles, particularly melanated truffles, produce anandamide, which is an endocannabinoid that can induce adult neurogenesis. So any organisms that are consuming large amounts of these truffles are going to be able to experience increased states of neurogenesis and increased neurological function, which I believe is like the precursor to Terence McKenna's stoned ape theory. If anybody hasn't looked into that, definitely check it out. But Terence McKenna, prominent philosopher of the past, 50 years, believed that primates that were consuming, practicing omnivorous dietary habits in the African savanna would have been following the grazing herds of animals and may have found psychedelic mushrooms growing in their dung, consumed them, and experienced adult neurogenesis and increased states of synesthesia, which may have led to the formulation of linguistic structures. And in my research, which we see here in studying cannabinoids, because I came at this from two different directions. I was researching the evolutionary history of cannabinoids at the same time I was studying truffles. And when you understand what basic cannabinoids are for, you understand that nervous systems would not exist in the complexity that they do without cannabinoids. For a complex nervous system, for a complex neurological system like a brain, you need to have cannabinoids to reduce inflammation because brains run hot. Their brains are computer processors for biological entities. And if you use them effectively, they will get hot. You're going to need oil. You're going to need like omega DHA oils and things like this. And you have to know how to breathe properly, or else you won't be able to use your brain properly, and it'll get very hot and burn out. So this is just the facts of life, and I'm not going to speak like it's some fantasy stuff anymore. Like, this is just what reality is. So the endocannabinoid chemistry within the cell is important to understand for the glutamate responses, for anti-inflammation. And beyond that, when we start to look at cannabinoids in evolutionary history, we can see that we share our most basic parts of our cannabinoid receptors with jellyfish. So it goes back like very, very far into what we are as entities, even before we could like see with eyes. And like here, it goes back to whenever our only sense was smell. I don't know if anybody, how many of you guys know this, but the only sense that we share with everything is smell. The sense that we've had before everything is smell. Smell is the only sense that bypasses every part of our brain and goes directly into our limbic system. And that's why our interaction with smell is different than anything else, and why smell can trigger memories and put you in a different place and have all these potent experiences. It's because smell is direct into our into our soul, into what we are as entities. And I think that smell has been bastardized in the past 2,000 years with a heavy emphasis on seeing and hearing and touching things. That we forget how important smell is for navigating reality. And when we're talking about truffles, that truffles, you literally are figuring out this what it smells like as it's leaving you, and it's like smelling like the most intimate part of your childhood mixed with like sex at the same time. It's just so weird and complex and puts you in so many different places. Like you will smell truffles, and like I've smelled truffles, and then I'm like in my grandparents' garage when I'm 2 years old, like I like right there smelling this one smell for the first time in this drawer that I opened up. And like I always wondered when I was younger, I'm like, why do people like the smell of plastic or book glue or like gasoline? I'm like, these things are bad for you. I knew they were bad for you when you were little kids. Like when I was a little kid, I'm like, this is chemicals, this is bad for you. Why do we like the smell of it? But then I got involved with truffles, and I'm opening every new bag of truffles I'm getting. I'm like, yo, this one smells like paint. This one smells like paint thinner. This one smells like gasoline. And I'm like, these are natural smells. These are not synthetic smells, and I'm attracted to it because I'm supposed to be, because it's deep in my ancestral DNA to literally be attracted to this. But now we have these synthetic counterparts that are mimicking these odors that we would have only smelled with these rare organisms. Um, so deep nerding, and like just to like wrap it all up, that is the current truffled vole theory. I've been working on it for about 3 years. I'm working on, you know, making it a little bit more coherent. But for about 3 years, I've been working on explaining this idea that I had and backing it with modern research that continues to come out, which is supporting my idea here, that early mammals and early animals may have been advanced, their neurological systems may have been advanced by truffles. Um, so now we're at the phase of discovery, because here in North America, uh, almost all of the truffles that have been discovered are in the Pacific Northwest, because that's where all of the mycologists were until mycology was popularized in the past 10 years. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all of the prominent, almost all of the prominent mycologists in North America were in Oregon and Washington. Um, and because of that, if you look at truffle diversity in North America, you'll see all these different truffles in the Pacific Northwest, and then it's like, where's all the rest of the truffles for North America? Oh, there just wasn't mycologists in those places. That's why we didn't figure them out yet. But now we have individuals that know how to do microscopy. Now we have individuals that know how to do molecular biology. And we have lots of people that are outside nerding out about mushrooms, that we can go find and discover mushrooms. We can go find and discover truffles. And this is going to be incredibly important for a couple different reasons. One, I think economically, that discovering gourmet truffles that are novel in the market are going to be beneficial to any individuals that are cultivating them, finding them, and selling them. Um, Two, I've been seeing in my past 10 years a trend towards ecological regeneration. Every time that the that the what should I even call it? Like the New World Order or whatever the hell is going on outside. Every time that the systems that be fail, like during the pandemic, we get a whole wave of more people that's interested in permaculture and how to live off the land. The more pressure that gets put onto the unsustainable systems, the more people that's going to be like, okay, I want to do permaculture. And with that, We have, more and more people that have access to land or, own land that are getting involved in this. They're getting interested. It's a good trend. And with more people with land access, interested in permaculture, we're going to see more food forestry. That's the goal. That's where we want to move towards. We want to create more food forests for the next 7 generations. And in my mind, I think that we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't introduce the mushrooms that we want to eat on the trees that we're planting. So we're planting nut trees, we're planting fruit trees, and a lot of different nut producing trees, almost all of them, have gourmet truffle associations. So if you are going to go plant your nut trees, or you already planted an orchard of nuts and you didn't put truffles in there, then you just get whatever random mushrooms you get, and they may be beneficial to the tree's health, but you could have been getting tons of truffles that's worth like $1,000, $2,000 a pound. So, what are we doing here? Like, we're trying to get money while money's worth something, right? Yeah. Um, and on top of that, we're trying to eat these truffles. And this is where I think it's really funny, because it's so rich, it's so elitist that, you pay an extra $100 and they shave the truffle on your food, and then they weigh it out and tell you how much grams that you got shaved off, and then they charge you. When historically, whenever people started finding truffles, they would get pounds and pounds of truffles, take them back to their family and eat them with their family. And like, even now, if you watch recipes from Spain, like, I've been like just watching like truffle videos in different languages and just putting the auto caption translate on YouTube. We're at such a great time in history. But you can watch any foreign videos and have it auto generate captions in your language. That's amazing. So I've been watching a bunch of foreign cooking videos on truffles, and in Spain, they will literally like wrap a whole truffle in pancetta and like cook the whole thing and just like eat the whole thing, like a whole truffle, not like a shaving of it. And and for me, I'm just like, well, that's where you're going to get the benefits. Like, that's where you're going to get the medicine from it. You're not going to get it when you just get a little shave. You're just going to have the taste in your mouth and like a little tease, a little essence of it. But if you really want to get that in you, you really got to get it in you. And if we want to be able to afford to get it in you, we need to be cultivating it, because if we're going to keep importing it, then we're only going to be getting little shavings and stuff like this. Um, so Joseph Talon was the first documented growing truffles during the beginning of the 19th century, and it was said that he began planting acorns under oaks that produced truffles, and then transplanting the seedlings. So, pretty intuitive. And there was a lot of, not a lot, but as truffle cultivation began into the turn of the 19th century, a lot of it was like people just planting oak trees near where they saw productive truffle land. And then there was this one particular, I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of it was, what their name was, but there was one particularly lucky individual that had some land in Italy that was on the, why they grow so well in Europe is because a lot of the soils are old coral reef beds in Europe. In Italy and Spain, the base of the soil, it was an old coral reef. It means it's limestone. It means the pH is really high, and these truffles grow in high pH areas. One of the things I would like to emphasize about truffles is that the truffles that we like human disturbance, but when we reach a homeostasis type level of disturbance, like the truffle production in Europe is down by hundreds of thousands of tons a year since the World Wars. Since the World Wars, people stopped managing their countryside, people stopped managing their land the same way. More people moved into the cities, and everything changed. But before that, there was agricultural land that was managed a certain way, and then there was forested land that was managed a certain way. And the way that humans were living at that point in time was conducive of truffles. And we see a similar trend with the matsutake in Japan. Once the wars happened, and once people stopped using wood coal, and they changed where they were powering their homes from, they stopped managing the forest the same way. Because, and it's the same way it worked with the truffles in Europe. People stopped cutting down the broadleaf trees in Japan. They stopped cutting down the broadleaf trees that they used to use for charcoal, and then they became dominant, while the matsutake were growing on the pine trees, and the broadleaf trees dropped all their leaves on the ground and choked out the matsutake. In Europe, there was a similar trend before World War II, before people changed the way they powered their homes and heated their homes. They were going into the woods, they were cutting down these younger saplings, and they were leaving these older dominant trees that had the truffle associations. Truffles don't want anything around on the bottom of the ground. They want just a basic like grass, basic little ground cover. They don't want a lot of competition, and they don't want other organisms that has other ectomycorrhizal fungi. They do better with not with plants that aren't trees, smaller plants that have endomycorrhizal fungal associations. So, oops, sorry. With that being said, there are, and I think that like the way that my mind is explaining this to me, and I think that as I become more of a man and more of an adult in this world, that it will become more clear to me. But I think that nature rewards us with pinnacle organisms when we treat an environment the way that it wants to be treated. Like when we live in with a land and when we understand the land and when we reach this flow that starts to bring it into like where the birds can eat and the insects are thriving and the animals are thriving, then we will get rewarded with rare organisms like that can only exist in these specific type of environments. So that's where my mind is at, and I'm working on explaining it a little bit better, because the way we have to like maintain truffle orchards is very intensive. And I'm going to Spain in 2 weeks to go learn with one of the world's leading truffle research labs, Myco Lab in Valencia. I'm going to be spending a week with them learning about cultivation, and I'm going to be spending a day with them learning about identifying truffles on the roots of trees. And I believe that this knowledge will also translate into understanding and building into cultivating other mycorrhizal mushrooms. With these same techniques, we already have people in Europe cultivating saffron milk caps. I think that in our generation, we'll be able to cultivate almost any level of mycorrhizal fungi because we have now the language and the understanding that the generation before us didn't have. They had to figure out what mycelium was to tell us mycelium and mycorrhizae. Now we know mycorrhizae, so we could tell our kids, this is how you grow truffles and grow morels and amanitas and things like this yourself. So this is what a truffle nursery looks like. Where there's a lot of truffle orchards are using oak trees. One of the bigger truffle orchards in North America is using a species of pine, which I don't know off the top of my head. But quick little side story: the largest truffle orchard in North America is growing Bianchetto truffles. It's like the lesser white truffle from Europe, but it's a very good truffle. People just prefer the high class white truffle in Europe. The Bianchetto truffle is a very high quality truffle. And this truffle orchard system was designed by an African scientist that came to North America to cultivate truffles and had a dream that gave him the information to create this system for cultivating Bianchetto truffles. And he will tell you that in an interview. He's told every single person this. It's on all of the paperwork. This man had a dream and figured out how to cultivate these truffles that nobody else knew how to grow in North America. It's like in South America or Tennessee, or it's South Carolina or Tennessee area. So yeah, there is a fair amount of truffle orchards in North America. Hickories do well, and hickories in pecan are going to do very, very well because pecans are a type of hickory, which I just learned, and they host tuber leonii, which is one of the most complex, diverse truffle species in North America that's edible. There's so many different types of tuber leonii that's like delicious and edible. Yeah, I want to get into that a little bit more. So yeah, basically what you do is you save up a bunch of truffles that are rotten from the season, right? So it has to like there's levels to this, and I've already applied for a grant to try and get money to develop a truffle research team or a truffle discovery team, because you need a dog and you need people that can go travel around with the dog to go find the truffles. There's one person I know in Ohio that I'm connecting with that knows how to smell truffles with his own nose, and I think that my girlfriend will be able to do it too. I think, well, I guess we're calling her my girlfriend. We're both 10. My life partner, she could do it too. She got a real good nose. You know what I mean? You go out with the dog and you train the dog on a couple different types of truffles. You go find the truffles. You sell your truffles that you have for the year, and then any of them that are starting to go bad, you put them in a freezer, and then whenever you're ready to do your inoculations, you blend them all up, and then you either do a root dip or a lot of people are freeze drying them and then putting the powdered truffles on the roots of the trees, because the truffle is just loaded up with spores. And you can get the truffles to take on the root of the tree. But if you want to make sure that you're not wasting all your time and all your money, then you need to understand how to do the microscopy part of it. So you're going to have to be able to look at the roots of the tree and identify the correct species of fungus by the mycelium on the root, which I want to go learn. I'm going to go learn about, because I want to be able to offer that as a service. But once you do that, then you can confirm that your tree is infected. They call it an infection. I don't know why, but you can confirm your tree is infected with truffles. Then you plant it, and depending on your system, people are seeing truffles between 4 and 7 years, their first harvest of truffles, and that generally lasts about 50 years. That you will get a consistent truffle harvest every single year with proper rain, or if you irrigate your field the right way. So as far as consumption goes, there's a lot of ways to consume truffles, and part of the things that you're trying to consume is volatile aromatic compounds. So you want to eat the things that you can't see. Some of the most spiritual, most beneficial things in the biological world are the things that wants to fly away. It's the things that doesn't last very long. It's ephemeral, and the smells are generally those things. Like we know this from cannabis. We know this from lion's mane. The beneficial compounds in lion's mane mushrooms are aromatic compounds. So if you put your lion's mane in a dehydrator and you smell it, you just lost the beneficial compounds. That smell is the thing you want, and it's in the air now, and it's not in your material. So we need to understand that some of the most beneficial things in the organic world are volatile and aromatic, and they can be captured in fat. So that's something that's interesting. So we can capture a lot of volatile aromatics in fats. So we can do this by, you don't even have to blend your truffles with the fats. You just have to put them in a container with something that has a high fat content, like cocoa butter. So chocolate has the cocoa butter. You can infuse the truffles into the cocoa butter. You can infuse truffles into butter. You can infuse truffles into nuts. Because of the oil in the nuts will hold on to that truffle, smell very good. Cheese. You can even put milk or cream that's in a cardboard container in a small container with truffles, and it'll go through the cardboard container and it'll infuse in there. You can also do it with eggs. You can keep the eggs in the shell and put them in a container with truffles, and overnight the truffle smell will infuse through the pores of the egg into the egg, and the egg will have a truffle aroma. North American truffles in the Pacific Northwest, we have the black truffle, which smells like pineapples. And this is, I use more like a dessert truffle. It smells like pineapples and cherries. This is Leucangium carthusianum. So this is one that's not tuber genus. So there are a couple different truffles that we are interacting with that are not tuber genus. And I don't think I mentioned this here, but every type of mushroom has a truffle. Like there are truffle chanterelles. There are truffle morels. Most of the truffles that we like to eat are truffle morels. There are truffle boletes. There's truffle amanitas. Every type of mushroom has evolved a truffle line. So there's truffles of every version of mushrooms. So as much diversity of mushrooms is above ground, is a diversity of truffles below ground. But most of the ones that we eat are tuber genus. And they're all a lot of reclassification is happening just because of molecular biology. So this is my friend Sunny and her dog Stella. This is the only time that I ever went truffle hunting. This was in northern Washington near Canada, and we picked the Oregon black truffles. They also have the Oregon whites. They grow from Northern California all the way to Canada. I don't know why Oregon got the name for all of these, but they're called Oregon whites and Oregon blacks, probably because of the Oregon Truffle Festival, which I'm going to be participating in this March. I've been looking at this truffle festival for like my whole adult life, and I never thought I would be able to afford to go there. And then I invited the founder of the Oregon Truffle Festival to talk at MycoFest last year, because he's one of the world's truffle leaders, like experts. And he was like, "This is an awesome festival. You should come talk at our festival." And I was like, "Awesome! Like, what are we talking about? Of course, I'll go talk at your festival. I've been trying to get there forever." So like, they got me in, and like where I think this is so important is like, Oregon truffles had a bad name, a bad reputation in the 80s and the 90s because they were being raked. And when you rake truffles, you can find the truffles, but you'll oftentimes find them they're not ripe. when you use an animal to find the truffles, the animal will always find a ripe truffle. Um, and because they were being raked, they got a very like low quality. They were graded at a very low quality. They were internationally thought to be poor quality. Until the Oregon Truffle Festival came around and they started doing blind taste tests next to European truffles with ripe Oregon truffles, Pacific Northwest truffles, and time and time again, people preferred the the Pacific Northwest truffles over the European truffles. So I mean, they've literally, the Oregon Truffle Festival increased the price of truffles in North America by saying that they're quality. And so like this is where I think that festival culture reigns supreme, in enlightening and exposing people to new realities. Um, so the Oregon whites, there's two different species that we call the Oregon whites. We have Tuber oregonense and Tuber gibosum. These are sharp, like alcohol-y, almost smells like Versace cologne. Very, very like almost like herbal-y or something. Here we have Tuber leonii, which people call the pecan truffle, but this is part of a complex. And for some reason in the early classification, everybody keeps calling all of them in the complex Tuber leonii, but there's like, I think a lot of different species that grows with hickory that are different species, but for now we're just classifying them all as Tuber leonii. And even as we get the different genetic sequences, then we're like Tuber leonii 001, 0043, 00 blah blah blah. So like I think that there's a lot of different species, but they're all like delicious. So the hickory truffles are super winning in North America right now. Um, and I think that with with the proper research and digging, and if we set this up properly, that we could gather a team together that might be able to locate American chestnuts that may have a Native American truffle associated with them, before that information is lost to time. Because I could only imagine that there was incredible gourmet Native American truffles associated with the chestnut before it got blighted out. So here we have more Tuber leonii. And here we have Tuber canuliculatum. This is one of the truffles that's being cultivated now in Canada. This is known as the Appalachian truffle, not to be confused with the Blue Ridge truffle, which is Imea gigantea, which we found at the NAMA foray this past year. At the end of like, so it was like September or something like this. Somebody found one without a dog, like literally just like in a clump of moss. But the Imea gigantea, again, gourmet truffle. It had a very restricted culture of consumption in Asheville, North Carolina, because there was only a couple people that knew how to find it. And until recently, they put out information in large publications like Times or something like this, or like New York Times or something like this, because I believe it was Alan Muscat. He said that he believes now that it's more important that people care about nature than protecting the truffle that he was, benefiting from. And I think that that's also, a big reason why I want to put out so much content about nature relatedness and finding these valuable things in nature, because I think that it's the most critical time that people find something to care about in the natural world. So yeah, this is Appalachian truffle. It grows from Canada all the way down into Georgia. And again, not to be confused with Imea gigantea, which I didn't put in this presentation because I didn't get around to it. My apologies, but definitely look up the Blue Ridge truffle Imea gigantea also. This is Tuber melanosporum. This is the classic winter truffle of Europe, the black truffle. This is what I'm going to be learning most about in Spain whenever I go over there in a couple weeks. And it's being cultivated on oaks. This is Tuber magnatum. The first like successful cultivation of this species just happened in the past couple years. It's very elusive as far as cultivation goes, but this is the most expensive truffle. This is the most expensive truffle in the world. Here, let me ask my AI something real quick. How expensive did How much did the most expensive white truffle sell for? So every year, the biggest white truffles that get found get auctioned off for charities around the world, but they get auctioned off to like the richest people in the world, like like different royal families from around the world, different sheiks, different presidents, different kings, queens, dukes, whatever. All that shit's still real. I don't know if people doesn't know this because we live in the US or something. There's still princesses and princes and kings and queens and dukes and sheiks and emperors and all this kind of shit still exists in the world. We like literally just got out of the feudal system and like now we got the internet, so it's pretty weird. um but the most expensive white truffle on record sold for $330,000 in December 2007 at an auction in Macau. The truffle weighed 1.5 kilograms. It was bought by a casino owner named Stanley Ho. 330,000 US dollars for the biggest, for was the most expensive white truffle sold. These are like an elitist thing. Like I don't even know how like if you want it, you only gonna get like a little bit. Like I've never even been able to sell these because I don't even know anybody that can afford to buy them. So it's just like, why am I gonna even interact with this? But I want to because it's like a noble food. You know what I mean? Like I would love to just like chow down on one of these with my homies and like just think about how it makes us feel, you know? Like I think that'd be super cool. Um, but yeah, smells really, really gassy, top of the line. And then this is a tuberstivium, which is like the people consider this like the lesser quality black truffle, but I just think it's like its own thing. And this is the summer black truffle. So not to be confused with the tuber melanosporum. But yeah, so I think I got like a couple minutes left if anybody wants to ask any questions. I'm working on a documentary on truffles. If you guys value this information at all, it would mean the world to me if you could support my documentary. It's called Organic Nobility. If you follow me on Instagram, you can click the link in my bio, or if you go to mycosymbiotics.com, you can find the link to go to my GoFundMe, and you can support my work on truffles as I'm going to be filming in Spain. Um, a cinema like a cinema level documentary. This isn't going to be no YouTube documentary. This is going to be like a Netflix like film festival type documentary. I've been putting a lot of work into this. I got a really nice camera to go film. I got all the gear set up to go do this the right way. So yeah, you can support. I definitely need some help with some more gear, and also I'm applying for fiscal sponsorship for my documentary through a couple film organizations and grants, and they like to see that I already have some level of funding. So that helps me out in that way. And if you're not interested in funding the truffle documentary, but you're also interested in continuing learning about these kinds of learning about mycology, I do have a Kickstarter going, which only costs $1 to get activated in, for a mycoremediation online course. And even if you can't put that dollar in, sharing it helps. I'm trying to raise $20,000. So, I mean, if we can get 20,000 shares of people that just puts $1 in, I think that would be really, really cool. Other than that, stay tuned to mycosymbiotics.com for all updates. We have a really, really busy year. We're going to be all over the world. I'll be in a city near you sooner than later. So tap in.
All right. I definitely think we have a few questions.
Cool.
So one was, what truffle would work in the high desert oak pine, 6,000 feet plus? I believe Bart is in New Mexico.
I don't think I think I maybe have skipped over this page. I don't know why it skipped it. High desert pine particularly, not sure, but this is a desert truffle. This one in this picture here, I don't know why it skipped over it. This was like right after whenever I'm describing what is truffles. This truffle is written about in Quran and written about in the Bible. Um, this truffle fed the Israelites on their way from Egypt into Jerusalem. And they wrote about it. They called it something different in the Bible.
Man.
But in the Middle East, um, people are still to this day collecting and consuming these truffles. And for anybody that's interested, I am putting a part into my documentary on how this truffle unifies Israelis and Palestinians because it's historically been utilized by both cultures. So I think there's a lot of information, a lot of cool information. But as far as desert truffles go, this is the one of the desert truffles that I know about. And then I
What's its
recently
name?
learned about Kalahari tuber, which is described by geez, I forget his name. James Trapp. He's like the OG when it comes to truffles in the world. Like he's classified more truffles than anybody else. But there are a couple desert truffles, and there may be some that's already in your environment if you just go. Like I could do a whole nother talk on like truffle on how to find truffles, but I would want to do it with my mentor that taught me how to track animals because there's a level of like finding truffles without an animal that you can do it if you know how to track animals. Like if you can like follow a rabbit through the woods by the disturbances that it made, you can find a truffle. And like I know people that know how to do that. Because truffles when they're growing, they create what's called like a brumal. I think I may be saying the wrong thing, but when you're looking at an environment, a tree that has a truffle specifically that's producing will have a ring around it with no other plants. And the truffle is like putting antibiotics and pushing away other things from around it, creating its own little sterile zone to produce in. So if you can notice the circles in the forest, like, oh shoot, there's no other plants around, there's probably a truffle dominating in that area. Then whenever you look around that tree, there'll be little like cracks in the soil, and if you find those cracks, then the truffle's under there. Like, but you have to be able to notice these little nuances and stuff.
I've seen those
You could also
cracks.
follow squirrels. Yeah, you could also follow squirrels or chipmunks. Yeah, you probably have seen those cracks. If you would have dug it up, you probably would have found some weird fungus.
Oh my gosh, I saw it in the oak chaparral of California all the time.
Bro, oaks are the like premier. It's the
That's
only
wild.
plant I got tattooed on my body. Oaks are it.
Uh, so what was the name of the first desert truffle?
The first desert truffle,
The one in particular,
this
what's his
one,
name?
this one that I'm showing, or the Kalahari one.
The one before the Kalahari.
I'm look up right now.
Okay. Yeah, that was the question. I mean, I'm here in Texas and I just keep thinking about like we have this limestone base. This whole area was marine seafloor, like a seafloor bed. And everything I when I look at soils, I see diatoms and rotifers and like all these like well, I'm also where it regularly floods, but we're not far from the ocean. So I'm just wondering how much of an overlap there could be.
I mean, that's the in general the truffles like higher pH, but that's the European types that thrive in those higher pHs too. So there may be other ones that we have that just do well in our environment, but like they do like that high pH. I don't know if you guys can see where my mouse is.
Yeah, we see it.
This is the species, the Boderii. This is the one that's like more consumed in the Middle East and stuff.
Sweet. So the one of the like the last question, and I think this is the one that was asked the most is, let's say you have access to oak forests, you have access to all of these areas, or you think that you want to now change them, you want to encourage this. How would you start? Is this something that you need to just have seedlings and plant it all, inoculate it from the beginning, or is this something that you can inoculate into an already existing forest?
There's a lot of nuance to this that I want to learn because the classical methods aren't particularly permaculture. Like truffle cultivation right now is like not permaculture, but like I think that I can help in encouraging it to be.
Yeah.
So if you and also this isn't something that you can force. Like you can't just be like, I want truffles on my land, I'm gonna make it happen. Like because there are some people that have that mindset that's just like money moves the mountains. So like if I got money, I'm gonna get whatever I want. And that leads to people like chopping down a whole forest and getting truckloads of lime dropped, like literally tons, literal hundreds and hundreds of tons of lime like dropped on their land, like because it has to be like so many inches per like acre, like, and it's just like you just dramatically are you're and it's not, and then you're gonna have to keep adding the lime because that's not what the environment is. So you're just like forcing this like false environment on top of what it's trying to be. It's more
Mm.
so of like, okay, this is what I've been given. This is how I can adapt it to, and that's why I encourage native truffle discovery. This way we don't have to like try and seek out these ones from Europe and try and figure out how to make it grow in North Carolina. Like, what are we doing? All that said and done, it's better to start a truffle plantation in a field that was not a forest, that doesn't have trees and shrubs in it, that has more grasses and lower bushes and things like this, because they have endomycorrhizal associations. If you go try and start planting your truffle trees in a forest, that forest soil has thousands of ectomycorrhizal fungi that are going to try and compete with your truffle fungus on this little tree. So most people would plant into like a field that was grass or that was for animals or something, which is like, I mean, most of the land is pretty like not a forest right now. Like, I don't know the best way to explain it, but it's been stripped. It's been, we've made the ideal environment in modern agriculture. We've made the ideal environment for starting to plant truffles. We stripped the land. We washed all the soil away. There's nothing in there. That's where you want to plant truffles. Honestly, that is the most ideal place to plant truffles. And then if you have a high pH or like you're close to like limestone karst type topography, then that's really a great place to plant. Other than that, find your natives and then try and amplify on them.
That's beautiful. So I learned something that could add to this conversation rather recently. You know how I'm all about EM, and that's like beer yeast. That encourages arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. Something I learned though, lager yeast is from caves. It's a different form of yeast. And if you use lager yeast as part of your biofertilizer, it actually pushes out the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and encourages ecto. So when we're talking about flipping using biology and then, you know what I mean, inhibiting but doing it in a beneficial way, not like a killing or, this is simply like ushering in secession. But lager yeast can usher in the ecto. So yeah, just a little thing.
Can I add one more thing while I'm still here? Like as far as like, and this is a conversation that I would love to continue with you out like beyond this. As far as like KNF, as far as EM, as far as probiotic, permaculture's soil health is going right now, there's like a lot of people like to like put all this stuff together. Like, I'm gonna put the straw and I'm gonna put all these different wood chips and I'm gonna mix and make this buffet almost like, let's throw it all in a pile,
Yeah.
And like, when we're trying to create nuances, that isn't the best thing to do. We're creating like a big human refuse pile, but that's not what's conducive of nuanced ecotypes. We're going to create the most general type of environment. Like, if we keep doing this, we're going to create an environment that is conducive of only generalists, not specialists, which we need those specialists because those are the ones that have been pushed out the most. So just my last little bit of information. We're doing a great job, everybody. We are on an amazing path. You guys are playing with the soil. You got your hands in the dirt. You're doing the right thing. And I implore you to just keep on that journey. We got a lot of life in front of us. It's our earth right now. This is our time to run it. In the next 10 years or so, we will be the ones in power. Those of us that are closest to the soil have more access to wealth than anybody that's going to be operating with any type of fiat currency. And that's that. Many blessings, much love. Let's grow.
Let's grow. Thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is our Future 2024. We're going to continue. I will see you all in 55 minutes at the panel. William, thank you so much.
Blessings.
Blessings. It's that time of year, our Future 2025, our 5th online conference focused on our regenerative future. Whether you're an entrepreneur or regenerative ag farmer, a gardener, permaculturist, natural farmer, working with compost, mushrooms, mycology, all of the above, large scale to just backyard or your balcony. Join us for inspiration, hope, and regeneration. This is the way to start your year recharged. This is our future. I am so excited for this year. We've got over 30 speakers. I'm going to be diving deep. I have amazing giveaways, things that will help you restructure and redesign your life, from your habits, from your daily routines, to the way you design your business, to the way you operate your business. There's so much on the horizon this year that is incredible. Join us, get recharged for this year, get into the mode of reflection, planning, goal setting. This is the time to do it. Set your sights on an incredible year with us at Our Future. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And I'll see you soon. It's free, so there's no reason not to sign up. Join us.